So the Industrial Revolution marked a period of development in the latter half of the 18th century, the 1700s, that transformed largely rural agrarian societies in Europe and America into industrialized urban ones. So they're shifting from an agricultural basis to an industrialized basis where you have factories, things like this. And what happens is because of the transatlantic slave trade, because of, and then the colonization of Africa with the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885, where it takes place in Berlin, Germany. It's presided over by German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. And these European nations have been fighting and killing each other for hundreds of years, even before the transatlantic slave trade starts, when they were classified as barbarians, the Lombards, the Jutes, the Anglos, the Saxons, the Picts, the Franks, things like this, right? So they're fighting and killing each other for hundreds of years. They're known collectively as barbarians. They organize themselves into kingdoms. Those kingdoms organize themselves into nation states. And then and you have the transatlantic slave trade, and they're fighting and killing each other over the mineral wealth and the natural resources that are in Africa. And they realize that Africa is large enough for them to carve up Africa into colonies, and they don't have to keep killing each other over the riches of Africa. Okay, so you have the Berlin Conference of 1884, 1885. And what happens is, because of the almost unlimited natural resources in Africa, this is going to really fuel the Industrial Revolution, okay? Because now you found an almost unlimited source of the rubber and timber and all different types of things like this. And then you have the production of cotton as well in England. And we're going to see the Industrial Revolution is going to begin in the 1790s in the in the 1790s in the Manchester, England area. If we look at this article here from thought.co.uk, this deals with the Berlin Conference. You can read this. So in my online history classes, we get deep into this information. If you haven't registered for my online history classes, you definitely want to do that. I teach one on Saturdays, usually 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, one of the regional names for Egypt. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And we deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. That's, visit our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for that class. But this article here, the Berlin Conference to Divide Africa, the colonization of the continent by European powers. Okay, and it goes through and breaks down the Berlin Conference, and it also shows you the different areas of Africa that were colonized by the respective European countries. Okay, the Berlin Conference was Africa's undoing in more ways than one. The colonial powers superimposed their domains on the African continent. By the time independence returned to Africa in 1950, the realm had acquired a legacy of political fragmentation that could neither be eliminated nor made to operate satisfactorily, end quote. And 1884, at the request of Portugal, now the transatlantic slave trade begins in 1441 with the Portuguese going into Anton Gonzalez going into what is modern day, the area that's modern day Mauritania. Okay, it starts with the Portuguese, and the Spanish are right behind getting involved in the transatlantic slave trade. In 1884, at the request of Portugal, German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck called together the major Western powers of the world to negotiate questions and end confusion over the control of Africa. Negotiate questions and end confusion over the control of Africa. Okay, this is all about power and being able to exploit the natural resources of Africa. German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck appreciated the opportunity to expand Germany's sphere of influence over Africa and hoped to force Germany's rivals to struggle with one another for territory. At the time of the conference, 80% of Africa remained under traditional and local control. What ultimately resulted was a hodgepodge of geometric boundaries that divided Africa into 50 irregular countries. Now we know we have 50 countries in Africa, okay? But you have this hodgepodge of geometric boundaries that divides Africa into 50 irregular countries. This new map of the continent of Africa was superimposed on 1,000 indigenous African cultures and regions. The new countries lacked rhyme or reason and divided coherent groups of people and merged together disparate groups who really did not get along. Okay, so the most of the geographical boundaries that we see in Africa today are the result of this Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885. And we see Great Britain got a ton of land from the Berlin Conference. The countries represented at the time included Austria-Hungary, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, Russia, Spain, Sweden, Norway, Turkey, and the United States of America. Of the 14 nations that were at the Berlin Conference, France, Germany, Great Britain, and Portugal were the major players in the conference, controlling most of colonial Africa at the time. Okay, there was no African representation at the Berlin Conference. All right, so check out the rest of this article here from thoughtco.com, dealing with the Berlin Conference of 1884-1885. So as we go through and look at this history, and my approach to dealing with this history is understanding it chronologically, understanding cause and effect. As a historian, my approach to this is different than a 2-minute segment on MSNBC. You may see, I saw some segments that dealt with the history of it. They didn't go, they're not digging into this like I am. And once again, the foundation of the Industrial Revolution is the enslavement of African people. Okay, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, give us a heart on this broadcast. If you like this type of information also, be sure to visit our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Register for the 12-week online history classes I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. Saturdays is Ancient Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So our next class is September 9th, 16th, 23rd, and our last class should be, we're going to early October also. So we're making sure we get in all the content. There's 80 to 100 articles I reference, 15 books that we use in the class. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in the class. We just reduced the price of the course. It's on sale $80. That's $130 value. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. We had a great class on Saturday, September 2nd. As soon as you register, you can watch that. Then on Sundays, we have a couple videos here you can watch, also previews of the class. On Sundays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I teach Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. We have a few more sessions of that class. That class is on sale $40 as well. All this information is PG-13. You can use this with your children. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. Okay, so even after the classes, even after the 12-week online course is over, you'll still have full access. You can still go back and watch the entire course, okay? And if you want to support the African History Network, also in another way, you can do so through Cash App, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. We have the information right on the homepage of our website. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, broadcast our Sunday night show, etc. Pay some of the bills. So you can support us there. $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow through Cash App. When you go to it, it'll say Michael. It may show my picture there, but we have the information on the homepage of our website. because some unscrupulous people set up fake African History Network Cash App accounts, and they've been stealing money from us. So I'm still trying to get those shut down. All right, let's continue here. Okay. Let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation here. All right, now, hold on, it skipped ahead for some reason. Okay, so then, what was the Industrial Revolution? So the Industrial Revolution marked a period of development in the latter half of the 18th century that transformed largely rural agrarian societies in Europe and America into industrialized urban ones. Goods that had once been painstakingly crafted by hand started to be produced in mass quantities by machines in factories, thanks to the introduction of new machines and techniques in textiles, iron making, and other industries. So because of the Industrial Revolution, now you can mass produce these products because you found an almost unlimited amount of raw materials, and because you've built factories and you have machinery in factories to mass produce these products, okay? And then at the same time, you have the development of late 1800s or so. You're going to have the development of department stores. You have mass advertising, so you can market all this through newspapers, magazines, things of this nature, okay? So all this comes together at the same time. All right. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so we have the goods that had once been painstakingly crafted by hand started to be produced in mass quantities. Fueled by the game-changing use of steam power, the Industrial Revolution began in Britain and spread to the rest of the world, including the United States, by the 1830s and 1840s. Modern historians often refer to this period as the first Industrial Revolution to set it apart from a second period of industrialization that took place from the late 19th century, the late 1800s, to early 20th centuries, and saw rapid advances in the steel, electric, and automobile industries. So read the article. History.com, official website of the History Channel, has a good article called Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution. Now, also, more efficient mechanized production meant Britain's new textile factories could meet the growing demand for cloth, both at home and abroad, where the nation's many overseas colonies provided a captive market for its goods. Okay. In addition to textiles, the British iron industry also adopted new innovations. So you're dealing with British colonialism. You're dealing with a demand for these products in British colonies. So let's look at slavery and the Industrial Revolution. Okay, slavery and the Industrial Revolution. And there's a really good article with a number of slides in it from BBC.com, British Broadcasting Company, BBC.com, called Slave Trade and the British Economy. Slave Trade and the British Economy. So from the 1750s onward, a new industry emerged in Britain. The production of cotton cloth. Wool production had previously been Britain's major industry, but cotton had one key advantage. Machinery could process cotton fibers better than wool. So we know wool comes from sheep, okay? And you're going to have the demand for cotton, the production of cotton, and a lot of this cotton is going to be produced by enslaved Africans. But then also in 1793 in the U.S., you're going to have the cotton gin that's going to be created by Eli Whitney. And the cotton gin was a device that picked the seeds out of cotton. You're going to have the cotton gin, and you're going to have copies of the cotton gin as well. And this is going to greatly reduce the cost of producing cotton and drive up the sales of cotton and drive up the value of cotton, drive up the sales of cotton and the demand for cotton and the value of it as well. Okay, as a result, it was in cotton production that the Industrial Revolution began. As a result, it was in cotton production that the Industrial Revolution began, particularly in and around Manchester, England. The cotton used was mostly imported from slave plantations. Slavery provided the raw material for industrial change and growth. Okay, so this is from bbc.co.uk, the British Broadcasting Company, BBC. This article is called Slave Trade and the British Economy. And what's interesting in a lot of the coverage that I saw dealing with Labor Day this weekend did not make the connection between slavery and the Industrial Revolution and Labor Day. I just find that very interesting. Okay, now let's look at let's go to this article here from the BBC. This is called Slave Trade and the British Economy. There's a couple things I want to highlight here because they have some slides here. We're not going to go through the entire article, but I want to highlight slide 1 and slide 4. Slave trade and the British economy. British profits were made from exporting manufactured goods to Africa and importing products of enslaved labor such as sugar. And we know sugar grows in tropical climates, which is why one of the plantations that the Spanish are setting up, especially Christopher Columbus, when he goes into the Bahamas and Jamaica and in Hispaniola, or what became known as Haiti or Haiti, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Honduras, Panama, they're setting up sugarcane plantations because sugarcane grows in warmer climates. Ports such as Glasgow in England, Bristol, and Liverpool prospered as a result of the slave trade. Now, Liverpool, England is where the Beatles are from. So I learned about Liverpool from the Beatles, when I was younger. And, I lived before I started studying history. I learned about Liverpool because that's where the Beatles are from. The slave trade and the British economy. Today we view the history of slavery in terms of its horrific human impact. But in the 18th and 19th century, the 1700s and 1800s, financial considerations dominated the interests of those involved in the slave trade. So they didn't care about the humanity of people because they didn't think African people were human in the first place. It was all about the Benjamins, okay, or the pounds. Okay, it's all about the pounds. Okay, so it was all about money. They didn't care about the humanity because they didn't think African people were human in the first place. Enslaved African people were seen as property, and their experience as human beings was not considered. To understand the extent to which Great Britain has been shaped by the slave trade, it is important to consider the scale and breadth of slavery's impact on the British economy. Okay, so we look in the 1700s, Bristol. We look at these graphics here. Bristol, Liverpool, Glasgow are small ports, okay, in England. 80% of British exports go to Europe, okay, like wool and then later cotton. 1711, South Sea Company is set up. 1733, the Molasses Act bans import of foreign sugar to North America. 1750, cotton production emerges as a major British industry. 1760, Glasgow, England becomes main UK tobacco importer. 1800, 60% of British exports go to Africa and America. Bristol, Liverpool, Glasgow are major cities. Okay. The British economy was transformed by the transatlantic slave trade. The British economy was transformed by the transatlantic slave trade. Now, this is an example why on May 19th, 2018, which was Queen Charlotte Sophia's birthday, but also Malcolm X's birthday, when Meghan Markle married Prince Harry, and you had a lot of African Americans who watched the royal wedding and got teary-eyed and said they're in love and all this stuff. I said, what the hell does love have to do with it? I said, Meghan Markle is marrying into a family of colonizers. I didn't call them colonizers because they're white. I call them colonizers because Great Britain at one time colonized 1/5 of the world's population. And we know in 1952, when Elizabeth became queen because her father died, 1952, we know at that period, at that point in time, that's right around the time that the Mau Mau Rebellion begins, 1952 to 1956. About a little more than 25% of the world's population lived under British rule. They were colonies of Great Britain. So she married into a family of colonizers. Okay, then some people took exception to what I said, things like that, but the history proved it true. The history proved true of what I was talking about. And all you have to do also is go watch my broadcast I did when Queen Elizabeth II died, because we got deep into that history once again. Read that article I just showed you about the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885, and you see I was absolutely correct. Now, in 1700, 80% of British trade went to Europe from ports on the east and south coast in 1700, okay? 80% of British trade went to Europe from ports on the east and south coast. But by 1800, 60% of British trade went to Africa and America. By 1800, 60% of British trade went to Africa and America, sailing from the three main West Coast ports, Glasgow, Liverpool, and Bristol. So 1700, what we call the United States of America, doesn't exist. You have colonies. The American Revolution is 1675 to 1683. Okay, so you don't even have a United States of America in 1700. All right. Now, ports such as London, England, Bristol, and Liverpool prospered as a direct result of involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. Other ports, such as Glasgow, profited from the tobacco trade. Thousands of jobs were created in Britain, supplying goods and services to slave traders. So this is one of the many examples of how the transatlantic slave trade fueled wealth in Britain. And what I was explaining to people who were teary-eyed and distracted by all the opulence and wealth when Meghan Markle married Prince Harry, is I said a good portion of the billions of dollars that Great Britain produced off of the slave trade, I mean, a good portion of the wealth that Great Britain produced from trading goods and things like this. But the opulence that we saw, the gold and all the costumes, all the regalia, all that stuff was profited from, paid for by the blood and the sweat and the labor of enslaved African people. Thousands of jobs were created in Britain supplying goods and services to slave traders. In a period that saw Britain industrialize, profits could be made by exporting manufactured goods to Africa, and then further profits accrued from imported products made using enslaved labor. Imported products made using enslaved labor, such as sugar, which became very fashionable with British people, because in Britain, England, they're known for drinking what? Tea. T-E-A, drinking tea, right? Like you had the Boston Tea Party here in the colonies, revolting against the high prices and the taxation on tea. And this started out as British colonies, right? The United States. What do you put in tea to sweeten it? Sugar. The slave trade was important in the development of the wider economy, W-I-D-E-R, the wider economy. Financial, commercial, legal, and insurance institutions all emerged to support the activities of the slave trade. Now, I just want people to understand, this is not from like an African-centered source. This is from the BBC telling you this. The British Broadcasting Company. They very well documented the transatlantic slave trade and what happened. So they're explaining all this to you. They're not hiding this. Some merchants became bankers, and many new businesses were financed by profits made from slave trading. The slave trade played an important role in providing the British industry with access to raw materials. Okay. And a lot of these raw materials are coming from Africa. The transatlantic slave trade played an important role in providing British industry with access to raw materials. This contributed to the increased production of manufactured goods. The graphic below shows the parts of Britain's economy that benefited from the slave trade. So you have the Industrial Revolution. So what you do, you have a circle. Okay, this is cyclical. You have the Industrial Revolution. You have London and finance. You have the banks that are financing the expansion of the factories, buying more equipment, things of this nature, buying raw materials. You have wealth and income produced. This wealth and income produced, and the need for more raw materials, et cetera, to produce more products increases the need for enslaved African labor and the products that the crops that Africans produce, especially cotton. You have shipping and ports. This increases the activity, increases the demand for the production of ships also. Workers at the docks to unload the ships. You have exports and manufacturing that increases as demand increases. So you have this cycle. All right. Now, I want to go to slide 4. That was slide 1. I'm going to go to slide 4. Slave trade and the British economy. This is from the BBC. So this isn't from Dr. Yosef Ben Yakin. This isn't for Dr. Yosef Ben Yakin. This isn't Dr. John Henry Clark. This isn't Dr. Leonard Jeffries. This isn't who's one of my teachers. This is from Professor James Small. This isn't from Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene or Dr. Malefe Kete Asante or Tony Browder. This is from the BBC. So if you got a problem with this, go argue with them, because they kept very well documented records on what they did. Manufacturing. This is what I wanted to focus on. Economic growth and the Industrial Revolution. Now, for all those watching, and you saw coverage on Labor Day, and you saw the parades take place, and you saw the unions give speeches and things like this, did anybody deal with how the labor movement came out of the Industrial Revolution? And the Industrial Revolution came about by the enslavement of African people and the products that African people produced. Somehow that history gets left out of the conversation. I'm not sure how it gets I can't put my finger on it. I'm not sure if they're doing it on purpose. I don't understand how this just gets totally left out of the conversation. I just don't. All right, now. Okay. So economic growth and industrial revolution. Many historians describe the Industrial Revolution as a process rather than an event. The part that exports played can be shown as a virtuous circle. The part that exports played can be shown as a virtuous circle. You have the growth of exports. You have the industry growing. You have business owners invest and look for better machines. So you have the development of better machinery to go into factories, expansion of factories, building more factories. Machines get better. They can produce products at a cheaper cost, produce them more efficiently. You're going to have the increase for labor, to hire more people. And as you're producing more products, as you can drive down the price of products as well. And also you have people who have jobs so they can afford to buy a little something as well. So this also increased a demand for these products. So exports grow. You have products being exported internationally, but you also have the consumption of products domestically. Okay. So we see this cycle. All right. Now, cotton. From 1750 onwards, a new industry emerged in Britain, the production of cotton cloth. The production of cotton cloth. Wool production had previously been Britain's major industry, but cotton wool production had previously been Britain's major industry, but cotton had one key advantage. Machinery could produce cotton fibers better than wool. Even like I said, wool comes from sheep. As a result, it was cotton production that began the Industrial Revolution. As a result, it was in cotton production that the Industrial Revolution began, particularly in and around Manchester, England. The cotton used was mostly imported from slave plantations. Slavery provided the raw material for industrial change and growth. So you can't talk about the labor movement. You can't talk about Labor Day. And Labor Day comes as a result of the labor movement, and Labor Day becomes a federal holiday in 1894. And the reason why you have a labor movement is because of the Industrial Revolution and the unsanitary and unsafe conditions in those factories. And the labor movement is fighting for regulation of the Industrial Revolution. But the Industrial Revolution comes about specifically because of the transatlantic slave trade and the products that African people were creating. You can't talk about Labor Day without talking about the enslavement of African people. But somehow people find a way to do that. The cotton used was mostly imported from slave plantations. Slavery provided the raw material for industrial change and growth. The growth of the Atlantic economy was an integral part of the growth of exports. For example, manufactured cotton cloth was exported to Africa. The Atlantic economy can be seen as the spark for the biggest change in modern economic history. The Atlantic economy in the 1700s was founded on slave labor. Once again, I want everybody to understand, this is not me saying this. This is not Dr. Leonard Jeffries. This is not Professor James Small, Professor Kabahaya Walter Kamene. This is not African Center scholars. This is the British Broadcasting Company. This is the BBC telling you this, because they kept thorough records of what they did. So I just want everybody to to understand this, because you always have people, why are you bringing up old stuff? Why are you talking about history? Oh, this is racist. Well, racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy for the purpose of preserving genetic white survival on a planet that's less than 10% European. This does deal with racism. You're absolutely correct. But this deals with history. Key features of the Industrial Revolution: introduction of factories, introduction of cotton, increase in productivity, use of machines, water and steam power, and falling prices. Okay. Key features of the Industrial Revolution included products were made in factories instead of at home. Workers used machines instead of working by hand. The machines were driven by water or steam. One worker could produce much more each day. For example, a cotton spinner could spin 200 times as much cotton in the year 1800 compared to 1700. Cotton becomes Britain's greatest export industry. Okay, so check out the rest of this here. And this is some of the information we get deep into in my online history classes. So if you haven't registered for those, be sure to register for those at our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And we'll post the link here as well. So we do that on Saturdays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As soon as you register, you can start watching the content. We have the information right on the homepage of our website. All right, let's continue here. So how you all like this type of information? Are you all learning anything? The history of Labor Day, and I've researched this history thoroughly, the history of Labor Day is much deeper than what you see on TV with the parades, speeches, things like this. And the roots of Labor Day go into the transatlantic slave trade.
Is your child struggling with reading, writing, learning loss, and a culturally irrelevant curriculum? Do you want your child to be outstanding at reading and writing and also take pride in their culture? Then you want Reading Revolution Online. Reading Revolution Online is a web-based reading support program. We serve scholars in grades K through 8, and through our innovative approach, we help them build reading confidence and cultural identity development, equipping them for success in school and life. They learn about Black heroes and sheroes through captioned videos, reading selections, and other activities. Reading Revolution Online is an experience for the whole family. Do it for the culture. Go to readingrevolution.org and get your